letting everyone have a chance to come in. An opportunity to settle in to our soul session for today. In our moments of preparation, we'll take the first minute or so, prepare ourselves to receive. And when we say to prepare ourselves to receive, it's operating to eliminate as many distractions as possible. Interesting thought for today that sometimes the things that were once our center of attraction become our primary distractions because they don't serve us well in that moment. We're approaching our first minute here. Give ourselves another 15, 20 seconds or so, and I will jump right on in. Know that some of us are still settling, some are traveling from the holidays, different things are happening. All right, we're at our minute and 30 seconds time. Good afternoon, everyone. 3:21 is our time to start. We start at 3:21, and some may be wondering why that time. What's specific, what's significant about that time. In this year I have committed consciously to understanding the significance and calling to remembrance the significance of the time 321 321 all year long at Kingdom Assembly of Grace and Truth, which is the local assembly or church body of believers that I serve as the spiritual leader of. The Lord said 321 321, and I said, well, God, why do I keep seeing this 321? What's the significance of it? And as I prepared for the theme for that year, the Lord led me to John 3:21. So the third chapter in the 21st verse speaks of us walking in the light, living in truth, living out our lives in the light. And it speaks of the fact that those that live in the light, that live in truth, they're manifesting the good that they're doing, and they're making sure that the good that is manifested, that it is wrought in God, and we talked about that today in service. That wrought in God means that it is of God, from God, for God, powered by God, that God gives you the power to perform it, that God is the purpose behind it, and that God is the one that is fulfilling the promise that is to come from it. That again, wrought in God, that their good works, that the truth that they're doing, that because they're living in this truth, that they're not ashamed of it, and they understand that the fruits of it are wrought in God, and that ultimately they will be good. And so if you're wondering why we're starting at 321 each day, that is the reason why we are starting at 321 each day, because all year long I've been called, challenged to bring attention to and significance to the time 321, because all of 2022, that's what God kept showing me. I would look at clocks. I would wake up at 321. I would see things and it would be 321. I'd see banners and I would see signs and bulletins, and it was always 321. And so this year is our year to call that thing into order. And then also looking at it 321 helps us also to decide, to delineate, to bring things down from having to make so many choices, to understanding that ultimately there's one choice, 321. Ultimately that we come down to the one. And so today, I'm excited to share with you the objective of the negative. The objective of the negative. What's the purpose behind some of the negative things that are going on in our lives? Some of the things that we see as negative. And in the Lord brought to my remembrance in 2007. 2000? No, that's not right. It was our seventh year. It was our seventh year. That's what's more accurate. In our seventh year, we talked about good only. And when we say good only, God never called us bad. God did not call us bad. God called some of the things that we had done bad. But when God created mankind and all that God created, God called it good. And when we were created good only. And it was our choice to take on, to be conscious, and to find ourselves in a place where we had knowledge of good and evil. Knowing good and evil still does not make us evil. It gives us access to evil. It gives us exposure to evil. And not only that, but it gives evil access and exposure to us because we've opened ourselves up to it. And so it's from this context that we start today. That context is the construct for today, that we were created good, that God called us good, and that God still sees us as good. And that what happens is, in the lens of Jesus, or because of the lens of Jesus, God is still able to see good only in us. And that the one of the ways that we deal with that, we talked about it last week, forgiving what we can't forget until we can. And what we have to be able to do with that is that we have to be able to get to a place in our lives where we can recall the good. The Bible says, he says, this I recall to my mind, therefore I have hope. So I'm recalling things from the past to give me hope for the future. But here's the thing, if everything that you recall brings you back to a negative place and a negative space, then how does that give you hope for the future? What do you have to look forward to? And so recalling is only the beginning of it. And if you'll remember from our first session, if you have not seen that, go back and take some time and take a look at that, because that's where we focused on how we think. We had to begin with how we think, because when we understand how we think, we can govern and better garner what we think. Okay. And so how we think, the beginning stages of that are memory, what we recall and what we remember. But at the top of that is creation. Because remember, God, our creator, Elohim, God, said, let us make. So that means that we're created in God's image and after God's likeness, which means we too have the ability to move from a place and space of memory and into a place and space of creation. That we're not only limited to what we remember, we're not only limited to what things have been done to us, but that we're able to do, we're able to create. And so it's with that I share with you the idea today, the objective of the negative. How do we go back into our past and recall negative things, but then recover from what we recall something positive? Let me ask you that question again, because that's the question we're answering today. How do I look back into my past? How do I recall from my past something negative and recover from that negativity something positive? How do I discover from what I've recalled something negative and get something positive from that? The way that we do that, the first thing we need to understand, let's paint the picture. And the picture that the Lord shared with me today to talk to you about and to share with us together is the camera. The camera takes the picture. The camera captures the moment. Okay. And what the camera does in capturing the moment, it captures a moment in time. And then when we are going to look at what the camera captured, we are going to recall. We are going to redevelop what the camera has already captured. And so what we have to understand, that the objective is of the negative is to hold in place the moment or the memory. It's to hold in place the moment or the memory. And so the first thing that we need to understand that the camera is doing is that it is captivating us. That in order for the objective of the negative is to captivate us. Now, how does the negative work? Why is the negative important? The negative has to be only exposed in a dark room. Okay. And when I say exposed in a dark room, it's because if we provide too much light too soon to that negativity, then we expose it and we lose the depth of the darkness. I hope you're not missing these words as I'm sharing them with you, because I believe that the Lord is intentional in all that is being shared. If we expose that negative to the light too soon, then we lose the depth of darkness. And so what it's doing, that negative captures or captivates us. Now, in this dark room, in this dark space, We're saying to the negative, we're saying to the picture, we're saying to the memory, it's okay for you to be exactly who you are. It's okay for you to exist exactly as you are. There's no light here to judge you. There's no liquid. There's no chemical. There's nothing here that can change your form. Be exactly who you are. So the objective of the negative first is to let us know that darkness is a safe space. Because remember, it's the Lord that brought us out of darkness and into marvelous light. Remember that it is from the darkness, from the void that was in the earth, that God created us, that God said, let there be light. And so that in this negative in most cases, negative in a biblical instance, in almost all cases, speaks to ignorance, our lack of information, our not knowing. And it's not evil per se. And when I say per se, because ignorance sometimes brings us to the place of and exposes us to ignorance, and so or to evil. So that's why we have to be mindful and careful of that. So the first thing that this does when we talk about the objective of the negative, the first thing that it does is it captivates us. And into this place and space, into the dark room, and in the dark room where we need to be able to maintain the depth of darkness, the depth of darkness. And the depth of darkness is, and another thing that came to mind for me is I'm a moviegoer. If you don't know that about me, I'm a moviegoer. And as a moviegoer, I go to the movies quite often, multiple times a week. And so when I say multiple times a week, you say, well, Julius, how can you go to movies multiple times a week? There's not that much stuff out. And when there are those a number of things out, then I'll go to the movies a number of times. But sometimes there's only one thing out, so I'll go out once that week. But nevertheless, one of the things that movie theaters, that cinemas are celebrating now is the fact that technology has allowed them to get a darker black. And that what they're doing with that darker black is that because the screen now gets darker, because they have a hue of darkness that is darker than it used to be, it brings clarity to the picture once the light gets to it. And I pray that you don't miss this, because when we talk about the depth of darkness, for a long time, that even when you think about black and white films, the darkest hue wasn't black. The darkest hue was some sepia color. It was a shade of gray. And so in that, they weren't able to give us this depth of color. They weren't able to give us this brightness and broad variety of colors. And so when you're able to get to a deeper depth of darkness, then you're able to appreciate the shades of light even more. So when we talk about the objective of the negative, it really is to give us a perspective, to give us a wider range of understanding what good is versus what bad is. And so when I go into my past and I go to pull something from my past into my present in hopes that it'll give me a greater perspective of the future, then I need to be able to understand that whatever negative thing I pull, I need to be able to look to that and identify, what can I learn from it? What did this teach me? And so the objective of the negative is to help me identify, first of all, that I was captivated in a moment. And when I was captivated in that moment, what did I do? Who was captivated in that moment with me? What did we learn? Why were we there? What was the purpose of that? If it was painful, what was the purpose of the pain? Does it still hurt? Some of us are dealing with memories today, and so every time we go back and look at that memory, it still hurts. But why does it still hurt? It still hurts because we haven't healed from it. And so we go back into this dark place and we go and find this little child. We go and find this vulnerable and broken version of ourselves. But why have we not healed from it? What is the depth of darkness that needs to be brought to light? Remember, the dark room is the safe place. It's the place and space where it's okay to be exactly who you were. If you're a little girl and you dealt with rape, or you dealt with not having your father around, what did that feel like? Why does it hurt? Be able to understand the objective of that negative. Why is that such a dark place? Why is that you're still looking for your father in every male relationship that you encounter? And why is it that you're expecting them to do something that your father never did? What is the depth of that darkness? What is it that you're going through? What is it that you've got to get through? What is the depth of that darkness? Who is that child? We talk about men and not having their fathers around or not having a mother to nurture them. Let me tell you, because we need both of these. We need, when we say a mother and a father, we live in a world today where gender and being having genderism is inappropriate. And so let's not say a mother and a father. Let's say a male, a feminine energy and a masculine energy. We need both of those. We need that balance in our lives, because if somebody teaches you to grow up never looking back and never having regret and never having those types of things, then how do you value your mistakes? How do you learn to grow from the things that could have, that need to be done better? If you don't ever get to a place where somebody teaches you and tells you that it's okay to fall, that it's okay to fail. But what you need to do is, in those moments when you fall, get back up. In those moments when you fail, fail forward. Learn to grow from them. But if you never look back and consider the depth of that darkness, why was it such a dark place? Why did life allow me to go through something so intense that I'm still dealing with it and I haven't healed from it? Why did I have to go through something? Why is there such darkness in my life? Why was something that I did not have control of have control of me? Why do children go through things? Why does the Lord allow for these types of darkness to happen in our lives? What's the depth of it? What's the purpose of it? So when you go through it and it hurts you, how do you heal from it? Understanding, first of all, that being captivated in the moment is so that we can understand the depth of the darkness. It's okay to sit with that for a moment. Sometimes we've got to find ourselves in that dark place. It's so dark in that place sometimes that we're afraid to go back, that we're afraid to go into that dark place and find ourselves there. Some of us, the place where we committed our first known sin, it's such a dark place and we're terrified. We've repented from it, but we never repaired it. We've apologized from it, but we've never grown from it. And now we've got this root stuck in this dark place and we can't grow from it because we don't understand the depth of the darkness. We don't understand God's intention in having us in that place. Was it so that that place will be sensitive for us for the rest of our lives, that we would always be angered to the point of sin? I'm sure that that's not it. But for many of us, that is our reality. For many of us, our reality is that we are sitting in a place, in a dark place, and we refuse to come out of it because we don't understand the depth of the darkness. So understanding the objective of the negative is to first understand that in beginning in a dark place, that dark place is a safe place to be real, to be true, to be open, and to be honest, and to be fully exposed. What the camera has is an exposure. Now, after that thing has been exposed, the next thing that's happening after that happens is that we begin to introduce hues of light. Okay. Now, so in introducing hues of light, the next thing that we're doing is we're now identifying what's the brightest moment. We've identified the darkest moment. What's the brightest moment? Now, let's talk about this for a minute and sit with this for a minute as well, because the depth of darkness identifies just how far into the light we can go. How much light can we get? And so when we begin to what they call overexposed film, then we start losing the things in between. Okay, so we've got to be able to appreciate the darkest moment, in addition to celebrating the brightest moment. Appreciate the darkest and celebrate the brightest. Now, if you think about, look at even your phone, and you think about the brightness on your phone. When it's really, really dark outside, you don't need that much brightness. But then when you go out into the daylight, you've got to turn your light all the way up, so bright to the point where your phone is warm to the touch, because the brighter the experience around you, meaning the brighter the exposure there, then the brighter the negative has to be. And so what's happening is, in this dark place, I'm now exposing my negative to light. And when I expose my negative to light, if I do that too fast and I don't see all of the hues, if I don't see all of the reasons why I went through what I went through, if I don't see all of my levels of development, let's talk about it like that for a moment, our levels of development. So say, for example, you're an individual, and the first time you got behind the wheel, you were terrified. You were so afraid to look out of the mirror and all of the windows and see all of the things and you're considering all the things that could happen. And you've got to understand your levels of development. And so the first time you got in the car, maybe you didn't turn on the ignition because you were too busy, afraid of, and focused on the accidents that could happen, all of the accidents that people in your family have been in. And so you got to deal with all of that trauma. And in dealing with all of that trauma, you're sitting with that. And in sitting in that dark place, what you're able to do is that you're able to identify the levels of development. How have I developed? How have I grown? How have I changed? Okay. And when you're able to identify the levels of development, that's what they're doing when they move that negative, the objective of the negative. I keep saying that so we understand where we are. And so after I understood the depth of the darkness, I found the darkest place. Now I identify the levels of development, and I keep introducing it to light gradually. And I introduce it to light, and what they do is they take this picture, this exposure, quote unquote, that they have, and they put the film into a liquid, and they lift it up. And then they hold it up to a very dim light, a light that it's safe to be exposed to. And they begin to identify what's in there. Can I take this up to another level? Can I develop this? Can I increase the intensity of the chemical? Can I increase the intensity of the adverse energy? Can I turn the light on a little bit more? Can I brighten this a little bit more? And as I brighten that, what I'm doing is I'm introducing my black and whites first. How white can I go with this? How much light is there actually in this? And so that's what's happening next. Now, after I've dealt with number one, my depth of darkness, then I start looking at my levels of development. How much light is there? Were there any white spaces at all? And so we're looking at this situation. We say, if there are any white spaces at all. So I see my levels of development, and I say there's something really, really dark here. And then there's something gray here. And then I look and I say, oh, there's a really bright something really over here in this corner. What is this bright moment? What did the camera capture? Now, what do I need to do to ensure that I can still appreciate the darkest moment of this film, but still celebrate the brightest moment in this photograph? And I only do that by, number one, understanding the depth of darkness. Number two, being able to identify the levels of development, how much light is there. And then now I introduce color. And so in introducing color, this is where I'm able to be more creative. Now, what did I say we're doing? Remember, I said what we're doing is we're reaching into our past to recall something. And when we reach into our past to recall something, we've got to be able to identify the good and the bad, the dark and the light, the lesson and the blessing. And I'm able to see that because I can now sit with that moment of darkness, identify my levels of development. And now I can introduce colors. Here's the challenge with colors. For a long time, film did not have color because we did not know how to deal with the light appropriately. Everything in your life is not simply black and white. Things in your life, just like the things in my life, most of it's gray. Most of it's some shade of gray. Well, was my life good? Was it black and white? No, my life was filled with colors. My life has been filled with ups and downs. My life has been filled with twists and turns. My life has been filled with good times and bad times, sadness and celebration. My life is filled with all of these. And can I define them in black and white? No. And then some of us were forced to define them in shades of gray. And we only know how to communicate them in shades of gray. But after you've identified the depth of darkness and you've gone through the levels of development to identify and separate the darkness from the light, then you've got to be able to introduce color. We can't be afraid of light. And when we introduce color, color requires creativity. Color requires us to be able to look at it from a different perspective. When they say, well, what color is the sky? The sky is blue. Sure, when it's not raining. Some people love rain. I myself, I'm not very fond of rain. But I know that the trees, they need rain. They require it, that the earth requires that there be some type of water. And in order for this to happen, there have to be some gray clouds. There have to be some storm clouds that rise. When the sunshiny days dry the earth out, we need rainy days to replenish. We need that gray matter. We need those opportunities where storm clouds come in and replenish the earth. We need that. But then what happens after the rain and the sun begins to come out again? When the light shines in a stormy place, when the light shines and brings light to darkness, God promised a rainbow. That promise is a hue and perspective, new perspective of color. So you begin to ask yourself the question, what is this new perspective of color? Why is it significant? Why does it matter? And I'll share this thought with you because it just came to mind for me, that it's not about being prepared for the rain. And I don't even remember, I don't even think I'm saying it right in this moment, but not about being afraid of the rain or coming in out of the rain, but learning to dance in the rain. What would happen if we understood how to dance in the rain? To understand that in our lives, some rain clouds are going to come. That in our lives, there are going to be times when gray situations show up. But what do you do with them? Do you run inside just because it's raining? But when you're doing that, when we're doing that, the last thing that we have to do, that I'm challenging and charging us to do as we understand the objective of the negative, is introduce color. The unique perspective of how the light shines on you. The unique perspective of what did I gain from that moment? Now that I've gone back into my past, now that I've grabbed this situation where I found myself in a dark place, how do I grow from it? How do I learn from it? How do I improve? What memory can I now create? If you remember all of the pain from it, what new memory can you create? Let me close with this thought about what our brain has the capacity to do, because maybe you didn't know that you were able to do this. Your limbic system in the frontal lobe of your brain, yes, I'm being scientific about it. We're going into that nerdish moment, that nerdy moment, that your frontal lobe, the limbic system, it says, this is what I remember. But then you have an executive part of your brain. It's still in that limbic system, but it's another piece that's taking place. It's helping you to reason. It's helping you to organize those thoughts. And it says, well, guess what? Had I never gone through what I went through, I wouldn't understand half the people that I encounter in my life. If that dark thing never happened to me, I would never be able to appreciate the fact that other people go through it. So yes, it was a dark day in my life, but it's created a golden glow around me. that people get hope from me because now they see me as a beacon of light. They see me as a beacon of hope. That although I sat in that dark place, I've now created from that memory a promise and perspective that says, though God slay me, yet will I trust God. Why am I bringing that up? Because Job thought about that. He went back into a dark place when he lost a lot. He created from that an affirmation of faith. Can you create from your devastation an affirmation of faith? Job said, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. When you dig into your past and you find your trouble and your trauma and identify all of your triggers, can you create from that a posture and perspective and position of promise that says, though he slay me, will I trust him? Because remember, recall is only the beginning of how we think. Creation is the paramount of how we think. Can you change your thinking, moving things from the past and leveraging them to create new perspective for the future? What's the objective of the negative? To help us understand the depth of the darkness, to help us to celebrate and identify the levels of development, how we've come out of darkness and into the marvelous light, and ultimately so that we can add color and contrast to all of the darkness, so that things are not just black and white and they're not just shades of gray, but that our past and our history is creative and colorful, an optimistic portrayal of all that God desires to see happen in our lives. This is our soul session for today, and I'm Overseer Julius Ford, and it's been my pleasure to share this perspective with you, the objective of the negative.